discussion items through our agenda, so we'll hit those and then get an executive director's report. But first, could somebody do devotions? Anybody ready to do devotions?
You know, I'm ready unless we've got somebody else all queued up.
I'm ready too, but go ahead, Doug.
Oh, you're ready already?
No, I always have them, but
all right.
go ahead,
I don't want to hold you back, but I had a wonderful devotion that I received today, and I thought I'd like to share it. It's partly because it's so appropriate, and partly because I also want to say a big shout out to Cindy Wilkie. And Cindy had prepared this devotion and for some other time, but then in fact it was so appropriate today that she read it in a meeting we had earlier today. So I would love to share that with you all. And because I got a couple of technical difficulties coming in, I set it down right here, and I have to grab it and make sure I've got it in front of me. But well, give me 1 second, let me pull it up. Sorry. This is actually written by, or pulled together by a woman named Jacqueline Deacher, a nurse practitioner in New York, adult nurse practitioner. It begins with 2 scripture verses, one from Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And John 15, verse 16, Jesus said, you did not choose me, but I chose you and have sent you that you might bear good fruit. Jacqueline Deacher writes, my work and ministry is caring for people with diabetes. In a rural area where there are few medical services, I've often been frustrated trying to meet the needs with my own limited resources. However, I've learned over the years that God's resources are unlimited and that God will use my small contribution for eternal purposes and for God's kingdom. Mother Teresa was once challenged by someone who said it was impossible to meet the needs of all the poor of India. She replied that God didn't call her to be successful. God called her to be faithful. Trying to be successful, to do it all, it will only overwhelm us and it'll limit our ability to do our part well. The more we focus on the tasks before us in single-minded devotion to God, the more we can trust God for the rest. And God's timing is different than ours. We don't always see the fruits of our labors. We live to bequeath. In other words, we live to leave what we have behind for the good of others. What a wondrous thing it is that people have the foresight to lay the foundation on which others build. That people plant seeds that others will harvest. That people construct buildings that those they may never meet in this life will be able to call their church home or receive care in a health center. That's bearing the kind of fruit that truly lasts, not just for a season, but beyond a lifetime. Let's pray together. Oh God, bless us with discomfort at easy answers. Bless us with discomfort at half-truths and superficial relationships, so that we may live deep within our hearts. Bless us with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that we may work for justice, freedom, and peace. Bless us with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, or hunger and war, so that we may reach out our hand to comfort them and to turn their pain into joy. And bless us with enough foolishness to believe that we can make a difference in the world, so that we will do our part in what looks overwhelming and impossible. Amen. Special
All
thank
right.
you to Cindy today.
Yeah, thank you. So first up, we have the special meeting of the Board of Directors regarding the COVID response, and Pastor Doug, and a new face on the Brady Bunch screen. Kelly will lead us through that. So welcome. Is it Kelly? Kelly?
It's just Kelly, like Kelly, but
Okay.
it's the Gaelic spelling. So
All
yes.
right. Well, welcome. We are looking
Thank you very
forward to hearing your presentation.
Yeah, great.
Well, before I turn it all over to Kelly, because I think she'll take it very quickly and well, if you don't mind, I'll just say a quick word of introduction of her. You've done a great job of it already, Dan. I just want to add my 2 cents. If you haven't figured out, she is Kelly. I've been introduced in writing and in the newsletter as our Director of Philanthropy. And you might not know face to face, as you said, in our Brady Bunch gathering today, Kelly. So this is an opportunity for us to just kind of interact with Kelly, and she will do some presentation for us. But before we allow her to take over there, I'd love to just talk a little bit about this motion, more for those who are not on the executive committee, to get an opportunity to ask questions, as we as an executive committee talked about this last time. And so maybe the executive committee might even offer some answers. But I know that there was one question raised about the motion that we would have before us. And that question was simply from Rebecca Durst, who I think is right there. She is here, and she mentioned that it would be good to specify, hey, there she is, that we are not using any funds other than the way they've been designated by donors. So the internal language of saying that we could use country designated funds is not 100% clear. What that means internally is that people have made that designation for that country and no further designation. But adding a little phrase to the motion might be useful, or that's Rebecca's point, and I would support that. Certainly, it's a very good point. I'm not sure if anybody else has questions or concerns that you think we should discuss before moving on a little bit farther and turning it over to Kelly. The process here right now today is to give Kelly about 20 minutes to lay out for us the need and what we can do to help fulfill it together if in fact we approve this motion as a board. We don't have a quorum online. We haven't heard from a quorum already voting. So based on the chance to voice today, I will send an email out with the recording of this session to the whole board and wait for a quorum to come back with a vote. So far, we've had about 7 voting board members, and that's not a quorum, but everybody has voted unquestionably yes. So I would anticipate a positive vote and have the rest of this discussion go forward anticipating that, but we won't formally do the vote except digitally because we don't have a quorum with us today. Is everybody understanding what I'm assuming? And anybody want to add some question or comment on the process or the motion? Okay, all right. Well, I think we should turn it over to Kelly, who is doing a glorious job as our Director of Philanthropy. We're having a lot of fun together, I think. And Kelly is rallying new friends as well as motivating family members and friends. It feels like family around here, to be engaged as much as ever. And in terms of giving, I'd say we'll see the financial report in the EC meeting that follows this special session for the board. But we're in a good, strong financial position continuing even in these tough times, which is just a really great thing to celebrate. And we will, and I think, Kelly, I want to give kudos to you for leading us in special efforts, this being one of them. But let me just turn it over to you and let you take it from there. The floor is yours, Kelly.
Hey,
All right.
just a quick
Yeah, go ahead,
reminder. If you're not speaking, put it on mute to avoid an embarrassing moment like Donna had last meeting. So just put it on mute if you're not talking.
I'm going to mute myself now.
All right. Well, wonderful. It's so fun to see all of you on here. And I've already had a lot of really great conversations with many of you. So it's really good to see your face again or hear your voice again, because some of them were phone calls. So I'm going to do some screen sharing. So you don't have to look at us this whole time. We can look at the short presentation, only 15, 20 minutes here. And then we can open it up for any questions or ideas or concerns or anything like that. So thank you very, very much for being here. Let me share my screen here. All right. Nobody's microphone's on, so I'm assuming you can see it. If you can't, then raise your hand or let me know. So this kind of came about because of the needs keep growing and growing, and we just really need help. And I know you're not in the office every day or online with the staff, but it is so it's really, really nice to have the support behind us and have all of you caring about us and praying and working and talking about GHM and everything you do. So just thank you very, very much for all that you do. Even though you're not there on a day-to-day basis, I promise the staff and our partners think about you all the time and are just so grateful for your support. So let's go to next. Uh-oh. Hold on, sorry. It was set up. Hold on.
The good news is you're going to see some pictures of what we're engaged with and our partners around the world. We are getting pictures in spite of challenges, and that's an exciting part. We love to get pictures. I was just getting actually some pictures more from Ezeta in Madagascar about 20 minutes ago. So that's kind of cool. Every picture with it has a plea, I must say. In spite of successes, there is challenge, and it continues, and we expect it to be a long duration, and that's certainly why we're looking at this today. Now, Kelly, I could pull that up for you. Would that be better?
Nope, I got it.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right. I don't know why I got lost there for a sec. All right, can everyone see? There we go. Okay, so, sorry, back to the start. Sorry for technical difficulties. It always is something, right? So we're talking about fundraising, which I know is sometimes really scary for a lot of people. Some people are like, oh yeah, it's great. And some people it's really, really scary. So I'm trying to make it super simple and really ask for your help and your just engagement in this whole process as we try to raise $500,000 for COVID-19 response. So we're going to go briefly over what the needs are. I think most of you all know that, but just really quickly, what are some needs and what are we actually raising money for? Because as you start to talk to people and engage people and think of like, who would be really interested in helping us with this, it's really important to know the needs. Identifying some people that you know and GHM knows is really a big part of the process. Also planning out how we're going to reach out to these people and pray about that whole process, inviting God into fundraising, which is really, really important. Obviously, reaching out to people, sharing the vision and the incredible work that GHM is doing, and then follow up appropriately. So just briefly, this has all been shared, I'm sure, through Doug and the newsletter or even online if you've been following. we are raising money for PPE for medical staff, specifically for our partners in all the different countries that we're working in. We're also looking for financial support for community health workers. So that's obviously the people that are going into the rural villages and they need help. They also need PPE as they're sharing information about COVID-19. We're also, so not only in terms of sending our own PPE here, and hopefully this is all repeat for everyone, is that we are raising money for grants for in-country production of PPE, which is super amazing. They're doing really great things in Tanzania and hopefully starting in Madagascar. And as those things grow, it's great because it's not only creating jobs and using the resources there, then we're also able to give that PPE to the people right on the ground. And then obviously a lot of information sharing is needed in this season of COVID-19. I'm sure all of you know that, especially the health professionals. So Doug, did you want to say anything else about these things? That was like 2 seconds worth of all the incredible work we're doing, which is a lot, but just for the basics, when you start talking to people or thinking about how we can raise these funds, these are really the key points that we're.
I think it's really valuable to keep those key points. Not sure who's needs to maybe mute in the background if you're not talking. It'd be beautiful if you can mute. But beyond those key points, it might be worth the piece I sent out to you, the PDF or the report update for this meeting has a little map on it, which shows you 250,000+ items that we've already sent around the globe for the sake of helping. And as I mentioned there, it's just worth repeating perhaps, that was possible because we got all those things for free, essentially, and we just had to pay for shipping. The vast majority of those dollars were spent just on shipping a large number of things. But the future is a little more expensive as we start to source by purchase. It's such a high value need that we must do this if we can only find the resources. We're not the only ones helping the whole world. We're just a little player. And so that's why we're focusing on those medical staff of our partner facilities. Essentially, the reason to focus on those partner staff, I'm probably preaching to the choir, is to keep them alive for the next generation. The last thing we want to do is to take countries that have really, really fragile and understaffed medical personnel and have significant portions of them die because of COVID-19. And then very soon, within the history of time, a small time, there's a whole other generation without people who are trained as professional medical staff. So really that's a high priority. Well, we're spending some extra dollars and we're not going to get donated PPE anytime soon. So we are all about that. It's going to cost us some significant funds and that's why we're going after it. Meanwhile, though, we are sourcing like crazy, trying to collaborate through lots of efforts with other folks so that we can get in on some of those larger buys that people are making for whole countries. So we're not passively waiting for this all to happen, and excited about some of the needs that continue to grow around the world.
Yeah, for sure. And although you also got that document from Doug, on our website, there's also an area that shows where we have donated to all the countries, and Doug put that out as well. So you can always go there and say, how much did we send to Tanzania or Liberia? So, great. And this is just also a reminder as we're kind of talking about the need and what we're doing about it. This is a classy page, which may mean nothing to you, but it's a fundraising page that we have set up specifically for COVID-19 response. It's been shared on Facebook. There is a link on our website, but this also, I'll send you this whole document after this meeting with some other documents too, but I'll also send you the link to this, although it's on, like I said, our website. Really goes through and talks about those points that we just talked about little more in paragraph form to say, you know, how much does a kit grant cost and what are we doing? And then people can donate there. So I don't know if you guys knew that we had this page that specifically can be shared on social media or with people, but this is a really great resource that's separate from our other giving page. So just so you know that's there.
So if you go to the ghm.com.org, you'll see COVID-19 response, and it'll direct you right to that page.
Yeah. So, and there has been some really successful fundraising on that page. So we're really grateful, and that'll continue to grow as we're going to do more online with giving. All right. So this is where you come in, and I don't want this to be scary, but we would really, really love your help and your investment in finding people who are really passionate about helping GHM and the partners do this really important work. So what I would love to suggest to all of you is that in the next 2 weeks, that you would identify 7 to 10 individuals, foundations, or businesses to reach out to. So that might sound like, oh my gosh, that's a lot, but I promise it's really doable. And even if you don't have any idea, these can be, it's best if it's someone that you do know, obviously, but if it's a cold call and you're like, you know, I know this business in town and they do work overseas and they really like to support that, we can do a cold call. Those don't always go as best as if there's somebody that you know that works there. But this is a place where we really need your help and not just in our own database.
Kelly, you said we could do a cold call? What do you mean?
So we could do a cold call together with to them. So I'll get to that, don't you?
Oh, okay. All right. I just heard that we.
Yeah. So kind of when you're thinking about who to reach out to, as all fundraisers do, you know, how do you spend your time? What are some great people? You know, I think probably someone popped in your head, at least one person just popped in your head when I said, oh, you have to identify some people to maybe reach out to. The biggest thing is obviously capacity. So someone who's not in a financial hardship and someone who also has a huge heart for missions and giving. So both those things are really important. And I would always assume that you're going to get a yes. Never go into thinking, they'll probably say no, because you'll never know unless you ask, right? So really there's just those key components, that there's capacity to give and that they have a heart for this type of work. So I would love to just take 30 seconds. You probably have a piece of paper in front of you. That one name that popped in your head, you know, like, oh yeah, my friend Stacy, she loves this. I could definitely really talk to her or reach out to her, and we'll talk about how to do all that. So don't worry about how that's going to happen or what that conversation will look like, or just identify and write down 3 names. Maybe it's a business you work at or work with, or a store that you've been to recently. So I would love just 30 seconds, write down 3 names that just popped into your head while I've been talking about how we're going to get 500,000. All right. Well, hopefully you came up with at least 1, hopefully 3. That's awesome. And that's the hardest part, I think, in fundraising, is finding those right connections and getting to the people that are passionate about this. And so if we can have your help with that, that is, 3/4 of the battle. And then the next step is reaching out to them, obviously. So, all right. So what I would love is if you would make a plan that works with your schedule in the next 2 weeks, like I said, to really reach out to them. So we'll talk about what that looks like too. But if you don't plan, then nothing happens, right? So to really encourage you to make a plan of how we're going to reach out to hopefully 7 to 10, but for sure those 3 you just wrote down, and really pray for God to be a part of these conversations and what that looks like, because that's huge for me. And I think a lot of people sometimes, and maybe some of you can relate with this, that fundraising is like, oh, it's me asking them for money. And when I began my fundraising career, I had to kind of put that aside and say, it's not me, it's God asking and inviting them to be a part of this incredible mission and have the opportunity. And I've had so many people say, thank you for the opportunity to give in this way. So it's really working for God and not you asking for money or your friends. So praying is really a big part of my work for sure. All right, so when we're going to reach out to these people, I am here to help. I want to help. I want to be there with you. But the best conversations are usually connections with you and the people you know. So I would always send an email or a letter. Hopefully you have these people's email, but if you don't and you just have a physical letter, that's okay too. To ask them, can you do a quick call or visit? And you know, you're knowing these people, or if it's a cold call, we can talk about what that looks like. I will send you tomorrow or later after this meeting, I know you'll be in this meeting, an example of an email or a letter that you can send. But obviously the more personal you can make it, I mean, this kind of seems like a duh. If if it's my friend Stacy I just mentioned, I'm going to send her a text because I know her. I'm not going to send her a letter in the mail. She'd be like, that's weird, Kelly. So obviously whatever makes sense for you and your relationship of whatever that looks like, if it's a more professional business relationship, networking, or maybe messaging them on LinkedIn and say, hey, we talk? We have some really urgent needs going on overseas. And I would love to talk to you about if you're interested in joining and helping. So we'll send you an example, but that's always best to give people a heads up, because if you just call people, they're kind of taken off guard. So to set that up. If someone doesn't respond, I always wait about a week to ask if they saw it, because a lot of times I just got busy. So definitely follow up in a week if they don't respond. And if you can get a meeting or a call, and hopefully you can say it's a brief call, we can keep it under a half an hour depending on the relationship. If they've never heard of GHM, then maybe we need more of an hour. I am happy, I would love to be on a call with you, go on a visit in town in Minneapolis with you. Obviously social distancing, so if maybe we're sitting outside or something like that, that would be totally great. I would love that, or be on a Zoom call. I know Doug is willing to. Always use me first, but sometimes people, it's just best, they want to talk to the executive director, and that is great, and they want specific details from Doug. So we can look at his schedule too, but I am available. This is what I would love to do, and be with you on these calls. All right, so what does that meeting look like? So you asked for the meeting with Ted, who you think is really involved with missions work and medical work, and we're going to talk to him on Zoom. What does that conversation actually look like? So you're not like, oh, what's Kelly going to say? What are we going to work on this together? Really simple. Fundraising is about simple asking, and really about relationships and just talking with people. That's my favorite part of my job. So obviously connecting interpersonally, and these are just examples, you can read letter. Obviously that's super important because we care about these people. Convey the situation, so kind of what we talked about PPE in country, information sharing, giving grants, working with people out in rural villages. So explaining GHM as a whole, but really what this urgent work is doing right now. I think maybe Doug has also probably shared with you, or there's a lot of information about the secondary issues that are coming up with COVID-19, the lack of food, because of jobs, just the, compounding poverty so much more, and it's just making it worse and worse. So depending on who the person is, we could definitely talk about secondary things that are happening as well as just keeping people alive. Then we make a request, just saying people are asking how they can help, how they can make a difference. Things are starting to open up slowly here in the US and how that's looking, but things are just getting worse and worse overseas. So how can they help overseas? Lots of people really do want to help. And so I just say, so I've just been inviting people to consider a special gift in helping us get shipments out or helping in-country PPE supplies being made, giving job opportunities to those. Is that something that you might be in a position to consider right now? I would love to hear. And they might say, I have to get back to you. That's totally fine. Obviously, then follow up for sure. Or a lot of people say, sure, how much? So, and we can talk about what that conversation looks like. And then obviously always close with a thank you, and thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And remind them of the huge difference that they are making by contributing to this response. So again, super simple sharing, super simple meetings with someone who's familiar with GHM or the work that we do. Definitely can happen in a half an hour. If they're interested in more specifics, and then we can set aside an hour. And people love to hear about these things and be knowledgeable about what is happening in the rest of the world. All right. So lastly, follow up appropriately. I always send a thank you email or a note right away after I have a call. So if they say, yeah, let's chat in a week, then obviously do that. And I can be helpful in all of that process as well. If people do say, no, this isn't the time for me, maybe check back, or they're just, said it's just financially we're not able to help at this time, but we love what you're doing. I always offer other opportunities because there's a million ways you can help. Obviously right now we're asking for financial help, but there's other ways to invite others. Well, do you know someone else that would maybe want to help? Do you know? And most times people do know of someone else or another business or someone else, some other foundation that they heard of that might be able to help with COVID-19 response. Could you post on social media? That would be really helpful, just about what we're doing and that we're asking for funds. And can we add you to the GHM email list so that in the future, maybe in 6 months, they are in a financial position to help and they have our newsletter in their mailbox or have gotten other emails about how they can give and help, and volunteer possibly, those kinds of things. So I always offer other opportunities. So, and 99% they follow up on one of those. All right. So lastly, again, I would love for you to know that I am here to help. And if each of you on this call reached out to 7 to 10 people in the next couple of weeks, that would be massive. That would be so amazing. I would be so excited. So I know a lot of you have talked to me on email and phone, but again, that's my cell phone because we're all at home for the most part. And yeah, so hopefully it sounds like a really simple process. Maybe it was overwhelming. I hope not. I'm trying to simplify it and just say it is easy to reach out to a couple people and that I'm here to help and that we can raise this $500,000 and get these PPE items to the people that really need it for life-saving efforts.
Thank you, Kelly. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
So
great.
does anyone have any questions or comments? You can totally say, wow, that was really overwhelming. Or was it helpful? And is it something that you're able to do in the next couple weeks as we're getting into the end of June here?
Just a question here.
One
Go ahead.
question, Kelly.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That is, what you said, first of all, thank you very much. And it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
Sam, it's great to see you.
Really, thank you for that. Will you you said that you're going to follow up. Are you going to follow this up with an email to us as well?
Yes, you mean to the whole group. So this is being recorded right now. So the whole board, everyone that's not here, will also get the recording. So Doug will forward that to everyone. I will send the PowerPoint. I will also send you example of an email letter that you can send out. And if there's anything else that you need, I'm happy, if you want to tell me, I can add it to the list. But yes, and then I'll follow up in a week or two and see how you're all doing and see if we have some calls or visits on the table, because I think people will be really excited to help GHM. Jim, you had a question.
I have not been on ELCA website for quite a while. I think Rebecca is on. We're always competing with ELCA. We share their mailing lists. Everybody I know that might donate is in at my church. Do you know what specially ELCA is raising for? Are they doing PPE, or do they have any special projects going on right now?
Indeed.
I'm sure, Rebecca, you can talk about that in terms of the overlap.
Yep. So rather than competition, I might say we coordinate. We've been having some ongoing calls with GHM to make sure that what we're doing is coordinated. I saw the newsletter that went out earlier today and acknowledged the coordination that's happening in Madagascar, and that is just one example. So yes, we are using our disaster response funds to support the COVID-19 responses internationally, and it is a large number. We're already at over $1.4 million that we've provided in support. We also have a fundraising appeal that's out, but that is specifically targeted more toward work within our congregations in the United States. So those two, there is some overlap in terms of the disaster response that could happen with those funds and what the appeal is raising money for. So we're coordinating within that to ensure that the disaster response domestic work with that appeal, with the funds that are being raised through the appeal, are going appropriately to the different synods for the different purposes. Our international work is primarily supported just by the Lutheran Disaster Response funds so far. And then a portion of those COVID-19 funds could go toward that, depending on where we determine the greatest need is after we work with all of the different congregations. That is the primary purpose of that appeal. So international is happening through Lutheran Disaster Response and is being coordinated with GHM.
Just a shout out to Rebecca and to the ELCA too. Zimbabwe contributions from the ELCA have made that possible, the large numbers of PPE that have gone there already. And then there was a redesignation of some of those gifts for Zimbabwe to reach out to other countries as well, from the ELCA's consent and initiative. So they've been very supportive through the GHM efforts, and Madagascar absolutely got highlighted in the newsletter. And thank you. So I don't know if that helps Jim in a direct answer to what you needed to know, Jim, but for sure the answer is yes. We're collaborating, and there are opportunities in both places.
Yes, and we know our constituents are generous and want to support this type of work. So while yes, we're looking at the same sources of funds, people are generous. So it just takes asking. So we know that GHM is doing good work. We support the fundraising that GHM needs to do. We also know that we also need to do fundraising. So
absolutely,
let's do what we can to make the most difference that we can together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Jim. But so I would say yes, we are coordinating, and we're definitely not in competition, because there's so much need that both of us, if we reached all of our goals, wouldn't even touch what needs to be done and what. So if someone is a dedicated giver to the ELCA, then that's great, and maybe not approach them. You can always ask, and they can always say, no, I really support them, and that's totally fine, and that's great. But I think there's so much opportunity out there that it's not necessarily the same pool. And I think that's one of the reasons I came to GHM, is to not have the same Lutheran pool of people. That there's people, especially in this really unique time of COVID-19, people that haven't given to us in 10 years are starting to give to us again. So it's it's because of this unique situation that I think a lot of people, whether they're Lutheran or not, are interested in the work that we're doing. A lot of people maybe not even be faith-based, and businesses, and they're just interested in this work that we're doing. So I think the opportunity is huge, and not to be afraid that we might overlap, because people are adults and they can say, oh, I already give. Okay, great, thanks, But yeah, we would never, I don't think there's such thing as stealing a donor or anything like that. But that's definitely not our intention at all.
Great.
Yeah, great question, Jim. Any other questions?
I want to return to the whole initiative of the 500,000 and offer one more opportunity before we finish that 45-minute we asked for, which is like 2 minutes away. If there are questions or comments that we should listen to together, respond to together. Rebecca, your question initially was well put. I don't know if we gave language. I'm going to suggest that if we were to simply add the language to I don't know if you've already thought through a language. I can make a quick suggestion of a couple words, and I want to ask you if it satisfies the concern. The intent, I think we agree on. We just want to make it clear with words that work. So if I'll read the motion that I sent out, and I'll add donor designated to those words. I'll say approve up to 500,000 for solicitation only, or from available donor designated country specific funds. That would be the change I'd suggest. To support GHM's efforts to help our partners respond to the COVID-19 crisis. Up to 100,000 of this support may come from angel funds, at the discretion of the GHM executive director and at least one other director. I don't know if that's enough for help for your question, Rebecca. I'm open to adding more words. I just wanted to keep it brief.
Yeah, or maybe, I think perhaps, but the question is if there are designated funds for specific projects in those countries, is that clear that it wouldn't reallocate funds that were designated towards specific projects?
It is to us, and can we make it clear in that wording? Bart, are you there? I'm wondering if we've got another suggestion on wording that might help. The thing that the average reader won't know that makes your question make sense is that we have, within every country, there are a whole bunch of projects. And so if somebody just designates for the country, they haven't done that. But that's not self-evident in the way I worded it.
I am here, but I don't have that wording right in front of me. So
Okay.
So I just got a quick question. So from a technical standpoint, you've already got some people who have voted.
Right.
So then are we going to have to go back to the people who have already voted and saying, well, we're going to change it?
So I think this meeting today could either add some phrasing to it. We had a handful of folks who voted only. I will send out the materials that we've talked about, and I could resend the new words, and this group could say, this is the amended motion, please vote again. Or we could just simply understand that the phrasing before means what we've talked about, leave the phrasing the same. But I think that's a good point that Rebecca raised. So technically that's the question. Do you want to amend the motion for sure, Rebecca, or shall we just go with the understanding being clear and stick with the voting on the motion as it stands, understanding that this discussion is recorded and official?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd still prefer to amend it just so it's clear for future's sake. Like people coming back, looking at this later may not have understood that it's not authorizing reallocation from specific projects.
Would it be enough for us to record that in the minutes of the motion?
Yeah.
No, because
No?
you are changing the wording of the motion.
I mean, if we didn't change the wording of the motion, would it be enough to change to add a footnote, as it were? It was discussed that this means.
Yeah, I think that could work if you define what that language means. This means that these types of funds could be allocated, but if there's specific project designated funds, it wouldn't include those, and just define that.
It's
I
a-
think just
I-
using it as a clarification would work in the notes.
And I think from my experience, whenever we've had a question about a motion, whether it's a year or 10 years ago, we dig back in the minutes, we read the minutes, we try and figure out what the intent was, what the conversation was. And I think if that's included in the minutes, then it's there for historical purposes.
It looks like Rebecca's consenting to that. John, are you feeling comfortable recording in that way?
Yeah, I just need, again, a little bit of restatement of what that clarification is.
I can try. Or
Can you help them with that offline, Doug?
let's do that. I'll take it offline. I think everybody understands the spirit of it. We're not going to redesignate anything. If it's designated for a country without any other specificity, it could be used for that country's work in COVID-19.
And I think officially, if we put that in the minutes, that then go out to all board members again, because this was sent to all board members, that they have the opportunity to look at it. And if they want to challenge that, question it, or say we need to revote, then it's public information. I think we're fine as long as it's out and the minutes are there. Yeah.
Okay. It's good to have it clarified. Really good. Thank you.
All right. Any more discussion on this? If not, I would just encourage people here who haven't voted. The email Doug sent out late last week. I think it was late last
Right.
week. There's instructions there. The email to send your approve or not approve email to. So please get that done. All right. Next item on the agenda is just to review and approve the agenda. So
Let me invite all, excuse me, Dan, can I bug you for a moment?
Sure.
Butt in, because we do have those who are on the board, not on the EC, who we've asked to stay. We've already gone 5 minutes past what we asked of you. So I want to give you permission if you'd like to step out. No foul, no offense. Thank you very, very much for coming and being here. Thank you for voting online later. If you haven't already, God bless you and we thank you for the partnership in ministry. It's huge.
All right. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Thanks, Doug, for sending them off with gratitude. Appreciate that.